G'day folks, and welcome to my top 10 list of Wargame maps. This is a tough one. This is likely to be contentious. I want to say off the bat, this is very subjective. Wargame maps are an art form. They are a form of creative expression designed to not only represent an area, but to reflect game mechanics and to be visually appealing. They are a form of creative expression, not just from the designer, the art designer and artist, but from the game designer themselves. It may be part of a series which requires the designer to adhere to certain standards. But they are fundamentally creative works. Now, I love maps. Many of you will be aware I'm a historian, and I love historical maps. And that love of history, the love of historical maps, is a key reason why I like gaming over these sort of historical games and maps. Many years ago, I used to teach the history of European maps, dove into the history of mapping and European attempts to make sense of their world and how they used maps to make sense of that world. So I've got a long association, a long love of maps that goes back many years. Even as a kid, I loved atlases and I loved studying atlases and I loved exploring maps of the world, and it's never ended. And my love of maps continues to this day with the love of gaming maps. So this is a very subjective list, as I said, my personal selection. It's not just about a visually appealing map. That's certainly a key factor for many games on this list here, being visually appealing. It's also about clarity, being able to convey complex information. Maps fundamentally often convey complex information. They are layers and layers of information. You think of a road map, it contains roads, buildings, postcodes, rivers, parks. I could go on and on and on. And in a single image, you can convey this detail. And so there's the visual appeal, but there's also the functional, practical appeal, the ability to convey information. And of course, the third element for wargaming is providing a focus for a gamer to study. And that's an important consideration in this list. Some of these game maps are not necessarily the most visually appealing. They may not contain a lot of information, but they may be a forum, in a sense, for a designer's mechanical ideas, in the sense that we're using that map and we're studying that map to inform our decisions making. So yeah, three key elements. There are probably more that I'm sort of have at the back of my head that I'm not really particularly cognizant of, but certainly visual appeal, the the function elements, the ability to convey information, and the ability to be a vehicle for information as well. Okay, with that out of the way, and again, acknowledging that you may disagree, and I encourage you to post in the comments, what have I missed? I will do sort of an honourable list at the end, because this has been a challenge, and I have spent a lot of time reordering these. These are going from 10th to 1st. And I'm sure there were many surprises for me when I worked through this. I thought, yeah, actually, I think this is better or worse, and I cut a lot from the list. But look, let's get to it with number 10. Number 10 on my list is Battle Hymn. This is an Eric Lee Smith design. The artists were Antonio Pina and Robert Shields. It was published by Compass Games in 2018. This game is wonderfully evocative of the period. So for me, this fits number 10 because of the visuals. It's not so much that it conveys a lot of information or that it's a map to study, but I love the look. So it fits that sort of first criteria that I addressed, and I think it fits it really nicely. Everything from the font, the subtle hexide star points, the forests look really beautiful, the subtle shifts in colour across the map, the roads, everything about this map is visually engaging and appealing. Even Gettysburg in the centre there looks beautiful on this map. And so for me, number 10 is hitting the spot because of principally that visual appeal and it's a really, look, it's fun. This is a relatively light mid-weight game, but it's a large part of that enjoyment of the game is the map itself. Having this map as the background to what's going on. Terrain doesn't play a huge role compared to other Gettysburg games, but again, it's just that visual appeal was really strong for Battle Hymn by Eric Lee Smith. Number 10, probably no surprise, but it may be a surprise because, look, it's not the most attractive map, I acknowledge, but this fits that third criteria for me. Well, two criteria. Criteria 2, in terms of conveying a depth of information, and criteria 3, a map that provides a forum for closer study and analysis. And it's Ardennes 44. Now, the map design here was Roger McGowan and Mark Simonich. This is from Mark's 19XX or Zockbond style of game. But I mean, the reason I love the map is, for many of the same reasons I love the game. It provides that forum for you to study and analyse. And so there's the level of detail being conveyed combined with the rules. So this is the kind of map where visual appeal, I mean, it's a great map. It's clear. I like the colour schemes. I think they've done really well to blend the light and the dark tones without just saturating dark tones. It's very functional and clear, and ticks all those boxes in terms of giving you just the right amount of information, not too much, and not overwhelming you with. Bold maps can be very dark. They can be very bleak. They can be very bland, to be frank. But this does a great job in balancing all those key elements. And so, the map design, the map style, is one of the key reasons, I think, why I like Ardennes 44 so much, and why this is number 9 on my list. So that's Ardennes 44, The Battle of the Bulge, first published in 2003 by G&T Games. Number 8 for me is another Bulge game, The Last Blitzkrieg. Now, in many ways, this is similar. This is a Dean Essig design with Nicolas Escaby and Dean Essig as the artists. I mean, there's often a common theme running through Dean Essig title designs, and it's very fluid, flowing map contours, which I'm really drawn to, and which I think facilitate really good maps. So you can just see around the terrain edges here. It doesn't follow the hex sides. If we go back to sort of Ardennes 44, where the terrains are quite rigidly fixed to the hex edges, in many of Dean Essig designs across the many different artists he's used, the terrain doesn't adhere to that hex sides. It's a natural looking terrain, natural looking landscape with that hex grid imposed on top. It's a white lined hex grid, so it's not really, it doesn't disrupt your reading of the map, of the terrain, and it really facilitates flow and gameplay and decision making. The roads are very clear. So whilst the terrain, the background, the woods, forests, while they don't adhere to the hex grid, the roads kind of just pop out just enough to be clear, and much like Ardennes 44, facilitate that decision making. So for me, Last Blitzkrieg is both visually appealing to a degree. It's not the most outstanding visually appealing map, granted, but it's some degree there. But it also combines a degree of visual appeal, more so than Ardennes 44, I'd argue, with those other two factors. So it just does what Ardennes 44 does, but better. And I think, arguably, I would argue, in all three of those categories. Visual appeal, depth of information, and ability to be a vehicle for decision making, to be a focus for study and analysis. So The Last Blitzkrieg hits my number 8 slot. As I said, Nicolas Escaby and Dean Essig as the artists for this game. Okay, Wargame map Number 7 is Napoleon's Triumph. Now, I've described this in the past as the most beautiful game in the world, but it's hard for me to separate what this looks like with all, and this is across the list, in fact, what this looks like with the pieces on the map versus what the map looks like. But I think we need to kind of consider them both together. The map itself, when you take all the pieces off, the map is, so I should point out, this is a Bond Simmons design. Artist is Jean-Louis Ernest Messonnier. The map itself, and I don't have many images. I have no videos of this on my channel, but the map itself is not so much visually appealing, but contains again that with the, it's not just the map, but the grid outline. It contains that depth of information and the decision-making processes. So as a map itself, it's nice, it's decent. It wouldn't be sort of top marks there, but it's the depth of information appearing on this map and its ability to serve as that, again, that vehicle for some really fascinating decisions, such that when all these units are set up and you're replaying the Battle of Austerlitz on this map, and it is quite a sort of muted tones, it's a background, it's much like how I described Gettysburg. Gettysburg is a battle hymn, is a more clearly appealing map. Napoleon's Triumph is a more subtly appealing map. From the font used for towns and villages, this is Santon Heights up here. It's subtle, but it's always there in the background. Now, your units are moving over these terrains with this font and this subtle background, and it's the combination of those factors. A really dark map could be disastrous. A map that is too faint could be disastrous. It's just the right blending of colours and tones with these bold blocks that sit on top. So I'm trying to kind of remove the block element, but you know, the blocks go on the map, and this is when you're reading the map within the context of these blocks. So it's hard to judge a map just by itself. This is not just, you know, map judging, it's maps in the context of gameplay. As I said, those second and third factors there are critical. I'm not just picking the most beautiful map, but you know, maps that convey information and maps that can be studied. And I think this does that remarkably well. So it hits number 7 for me. If you're frustrated by me prioritizing those two criteria, 2 and 3, depth of information and utility for study, then you may not like this one. This is number 6. This is DDay at Omaha Beach, and a lot of people have said this is one of the ugliest wargaming maps they've ever seen. Certainly very low marks in that first category. It is far from the most visually appealing map, but it contains a heck of a lot of information and it is fascinating to study. So for criteria 2 and 3, it gets top marks. I love playing DDay at Omaha Beach, largely because you can look at this map and you study it and you plan out your moves and you think and pause and plan, and yeah, you just pore over this map and the many options that are available to you. Unusual colour schemes, coloured dots everywhere. It looks like someone's just splattered paint over it. I should point out that this is, of course, a John Butterfield design with Joe Yost as the artist. But yeah, look, I love the map design as a map design that fulfills a specific function to drive this really unique solitaire gameplay in a way that no other game had previously really done. I mean, this is really innovative, and the map is the vehicle for John Butterfield's solitaire design in DDay at Omaha Beach. The map drives everything. It tells you where you can go, your movement costs, all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, for me, I recognise the value of the design of this map and its centrality to, you know, why DDay at Omaha Beach is such a fascinating game to play. Okay, moving on to my number 5, and it's Triumph of Chaos, the Deluxe Edition. Look, first edition was great, had a good, solid map, but there are so many so many improvements in this deluxe edition. Everything from, and again, trying to take away the units, but while still considering them as a contextual factor. The map in this deluxe edition is so much clearer than the first edition. It is clear, it is functional, and again, it can be the focus of study. You're studying, it's a point-to-point movement map, but you're studying these networks, these roads, movement costs, ranges, all the time. The cities are beautifully illustrated. The terrain, as you can see in the central region up here, you can contrast that to the Don and contrast that with the region I showed just a moment ago, the Urals North region, and the different art throughout the different terrains, and the borders between these regions and the clarity of that. So not necessarily top marks for visual appeal, but again, combine the visual appeal and the art. There's Astrakhan down here, Saratov, and the subtle differences, and you've got Moscow, I think, is over here. It just, all these factors and the depth of information conveyed with the time you spent studying this map combine to make it a fascinating game design, and number 5 for me. This is, of course, a David Doctor design, and the credited artists are David Doctor, Terry Leeds, and Timothy Schlief. I know Tim Schlief is a map designer. I suspect he may have taken the lead on this. Terry Leeds is a game artist. I don't know much about Terry's background. He's credited with a lot of game design, so maybe he played a role as well. But 3 credited artists on the game. I know David Doctor's always creating and sharing Wargame art, so he may have played a role in the map art as well. So for me, Triumph of Chaos, I'm trying to get somebody else's images, just capturing so much going on in this quite large map, in a format and a style that is accessible and engaging. Okay, number 4 for me is the Battle of Fontenoy from the Battles from the Age of Reason series, published by Clash of Arms Games. This is a Paul Dangle, Matthew Hinkle design, and the credited artists are Charles Kibler, Felix Philippoteau, and Timothy Schlief again. Now, there is a lot of diversity in both Battles from the Age of Reason and La Bataille maps. But for me, look, I loved when I got Fontenoy, I got the map out and I had the map set up, just the map without the cannons on, and I just loved looking and studying this map. And look, again, when you add the counters, this is a beautiful looking game. The vibrant red, the blues, and how it sort of, the terrain shaped this battle. The French defensive positions, the Bois de Barry to the right of those British lines, and all the little subtleties of how the French, like in the centre here, the French cut down these trees to build their defensive lines. And so there are all these tiny little, it's very difficult to see, but there are little illustrations of cut down trees from these woods. Those little touches that you see these in some of the more recent Clash of Arms games designs. And it's just, like I said, when I set this up, I just left the map for a while and just sat there and admired it. So for me, the visual aesthetic here was top. It's not so much conveying a lot of information, but in terms of it being a vehicle for decision making, it was also some good marks there, because terrain, the woods in particular, Fontenoy, and some other elements, shape the course of the battle and your decision making. But a really beautiful map to have set up. Heading to number 3 now, and very similar rationale here. This is La Bataille de Dresda by Clash of Arms Games. Now, this is a design by Montin Matheson, Dennis Spores, and Ed Wimble. Artists credited Rick Barber, Charles Kibler, Timothy Schlief, and Robert Tunstall. And so 4 credited artists. I don't know, again, Clash of Arms games put a lot of work into their unit counter design, which I personally love. But Dresda really stands out in the Labatale series for its amazing map artwork. It's another game that I set up on the table, a huge map footprint, and just looked at the map for quite a while. And again, there are all these little details, the redoubts, the woods, the orchards, the gardens, the towns themselves, bits of rubble here and there, the tree-lined paths, things like that, sunken roads, all these little details. You can just sit there and stare and study these details on a really, really huge map. So for me, La Bataille de Dresde hits spot number 3 for me. Moving on to number 2, and I think for me that Vakam Ry, part of the Goss series, has some amazing. Again, it's another Ardennes title, and for me, I'm a little torn here because it is, I think, the best bulge map art. I think it's better than Ardennes 44. I think it's better than the last Blitzkrieg. There is so much detail here. I love the design of this map, and again, it's not overwhelming. It's probably the clearest. There's a lot of subtlety in the colours. It doesn't, your focus is so often on the combat units on that map, but it all takes place over that map. What I think's sad about this map, and I should point out, this is a design by Joe Youst, map by Joe Youst, is the terrain is so often hidden. You so often need to look at this terrain because the terrain plays a really critical role constantly. It's not just about movement cost, but all the various elements, constricted terrain, rivers, vantage points, things like that. So you're so often picking up counters to look at them, that it detracts from gameplay. So in this case, I'm kind of rating high on visual appeal because taking all these units off, it's probably the best bulge map in my opinion. It's certainly important. It has a massive depth of information, and it's important for decision making as well. But all those factors are kind of weakened by the massive I don't like the massive administrative counters that are played during a Goss game, and the combat units actually hide. Whereas in something like La Bataille de Dresde, in particular Fontenoy, where the counters art enhance the map, and we saw that again in Napoleon's Triumph, how the map, the units, combat units complement the map, and it works together. It doesn't quite. I wouldn't agree with that with regards to Vakam Ry. I think the counters detract from really good map art, and so in this case, it's a case of visual appeal without the counters being of paramount importance here. So that's my number 2, just because I think the map here is amazing. And again, it's a map that you can study and probably should study. Studying the map in advance to playing a scenario is really beneficial if you know where those vantage points are. If you know you need to know where the constricted terrain is, where the roads lead, etc., etc. More so, I think, than any other bulge game. Okay, that's why, that map is so important, and it's beautiful. And that's, I should point out, that's the same for so many other maps in the Goss series, but I just think that there's something that really draws me to these Ardennes representations. Okay, so that leads me to number 1. What is my favourite or top wargaming map? It's None But Heroes, by a part of the Line of Battle series, part of Dean Essig's Line of Battle series, art by Nicolas Escudi. again, this is top marks across the board. It is without the units. Again, I set this map up and I just wanted to study it and look at it. It's a thing of beauty. Very subtle tones. It looks a lot, you'll notice, like last Blitzkrieg. Same design team, very similar color shades. But the topographical features here, you can see Antietam Creek running through, and it plays a key role. And this map is read on so many different levels. So you've got the sort of the more sort of tactical. You're focusing, zooming right in, and trying to study lines of sight. You've got the big rivers, and then you've got it's just, you're constantly like zooming in and then out and then to a medium scale and thinking about the big picture and issuing orders, and then zooming right in, to a particular regiment and planning their movement through the wheat field, for example. So 1 minute you'll be zoomed right in on 3-4 particular hexes. The next minute, you'll zoom right out and you're thinking, okay, how am I going to move this corps? And all whilst you're doing that, you're studying this map, you're studying the terrain, you're studying bridges and roads, and enemy dispositions and lines of sight and all this kind of stuff. And this is a monster game. It's not necessarily one of my favourite games, but for me, it just, the art and the depth of information conveyed, and how the art facilitates that deep and fascinating gameplay. For me, this is why it took me a long time to figure it out, but it's my favorite. I think it's my favorite game, favorite war game map. Not my favorite game, my favorite war game map. Again, Dean Essig, Nicola Escovy, that sort of natural topographical features with the white hex grid imposed, very similar to the last Blitzkrieg, but for the line of battle series, because of the nature of American Civil War warfare and the considerations and plans that you're making, it's far more effective, I guess, and this is why this rates so much higher than last Blitzkrieg. So for me, this takes the cake. I think it's, and I should point out as well, I've picked no more than one game from each series, but you could say the same for other games in the series. So this is of course part of the line of battle series, and if I look at Last Chance for Victory, Gettysburg looks much the same. Let's bring up some images, and it's much the same. It's amazing, but I think there's something about Antietam that I can't quite put my finger on it. So familiar with Gettysburg games, but and Antietam really stands out. Number Heroes really stands out for the quality of the map and the detail. Okay, so folks, they're my top 10. As I said at the very start, I recognise this is incredibly subjective. You may terribly disagree. But I also want to mention, some honourable mentions. First and foremost, Operation Theseus, for its ability to capture the desert. I mean, to create a fascinating map in that, environment that has so typically been depicted as bland and yellow or cream, is a remarkable achievement. So Operation Theseus, honourable mention. Empire of the Sun, again, for its, not necessarily for the art, but for the depth of information, and as a vehicle for really fascinating mechanics. Paths of Glory, my favourite game. Now, there have been many different styles of art. Some of them have been quite bad, but for me in particular, it's the there are some maps that for me are really great and bring out that information and facilitate again that depth of study. I also want to mention honourable mention for Fall Blau, Craig Blanchett design. really visually appealing. It's a big monster game. It looks great when it's all set up. 3 days of Gettysburg, and indeed the great battles of the American Civil War system, not necessarily for its visual appeal, but again for the depth of study and ability to convey layers of information. Now, I haven't played any great campaigns of the American Civil War, but I love great campaigns of the American Civil War maps. I didn't feel qualified to include this in my list because I haven't actually played these titles, but I'm pretty confident that if I were to play more of these, that something on that series would make the list because their maps are beautiful. I mentioned also for Crowbar, this is a Herman Lippmann design, and the map is really cool. Again, lots of little details. So honourable mention there, and I could probably go on forever with many honourable mentions, but look, I'll leave it there, folks. To reiterate, please feel free to leave a comment below. I really want to encourage you to have a think about this. What are your top 10? Feel free to post a top 10 list below. If you run a channel, feel free to post the link below. Really keen to hear what other people think. What is a good wargame map design for you? Is it the visuals? Is it the depth and layers of information? Or is it how it facilitates, has been designed to facilitate the particular game mechanics and design? Thank you all for watching, and take care.